What's up guys, Tim here from Audio Tutor. It's been ages since I've come out with a video. I wanted to walk you through some of the things I've learned in the last release that I did. So I released a song called Solar Eclipse because, Solar Eclipse. The first time I released it was in 2017 at the last total solar eclipse in North America, and so I thought I'd re-release the same song again. I did some new keyboard parts and things like that, some new vocals. Obviously I had to remix the thing and remaster the whole thing, and I just wanted to share with you the top things that I learned. So here are the top 3 things I learned in re-releasing my song Solar Eclipse. Number 1, and I think this is the most important of the 3, honestly, is using a reference track. I don't think it can ever be done too early. I think you can, even in producing, when you're like first coming up with ideas, maybe at that point where you're sort of like, you're coming to the end of your initial ideas, you could pull in a reference track. What a reference track is, if maybe you don't know what that is yet, it's essentially just a song, a record that you love, that's similar to what you're aiming at, right? That's kind of the idea. For my song Solar Eclipse, go listen to it, guys. My reference track was My Universe by Coldplay, right? So it's got a real poppy vibe, but it's also very fun, very sort of there's a lot of space in the mix. It's like very reverby. But very fun, upbeat, poppy, not too like alternative or anything like that. Very much mainstream. He also has, Chris Martin has a baritone kind of voice, which is similar to mine in some ways. We're both British, that helps too. So I found that there were a lot of similarities between my song and that song, so I used that to kind of reference and listen to the two against each other. But you can pull up a reference track even in the producing phase when you're still trying to work out keyboard parts or synth parts or like even the tempo and that sort of thing. You can pull a reference track either into your mix or just listen to it separately in some way, just to get an idea for production, right? Make sure you're listening to it, using your monitors or your headphones or whatever you're using to produce your record, right? And you might start noticing things like, oh, there's more bass in this production than mine, or there's more of a mid-range, there's more highs, lows, da da da. And we can go into some of the stuff that I learned in this process with my reference track. So to start with, let's go with like EQ. Starting at like the bottom of the spectrum, the first thing I noticed was more bass. I literally just had to turn up like the bottom end of my mix. I had to, literally just get an EQ on the mix bus and do like a little shelf, just by like a dB or something. It was like a dB or 2, just to bring up the bottom end, because I noticed there was just more bass in the Coldplay mix than was in mine, which was kind of a surprise because I'm actually normally the opposite, right? I'm normally pushing it, at least the kick drum, a little too hard. And that added, just by doing that, added a lot of warmth, which is another thing we'll talk about. Just by bringing the level up. The other thing was I like noticing there was a lot of glue in the two, between like the kick and the bass. It was like glue is like this silly like nonsense word we use to kind of make sure the two things are very much aligned in their arrangement, but also like sonically the two things need to complement each other and not be fighting for attention in the sort of frequency spectrum. So often people have like a boost on the kick and a boost on the bass that are like the same. So they'll be like, say, around 100 hertz, you're boosting both the kick and the bass. And so they're kind of fighting at the same frequency. And over the years, I've kind of learned that what you need to do is have your bass guitar is kind of a lower sound, a much lower sound. So it's more in the sort of 50 to 80 hertz usually. And then your kick can be a little higher than that. You know, it can be more around 100 hertz. And there's obviously upper frequencies you want to play with as well, like some of that fidelity up there. But yeah, having the two, the bass and the kick complementing each other, and also being like kind of loud in the mix, was something that I learned just by listening to my reference track. Moving sort of further up the frequency spectrum, further up, I think is that way. The harshness in the mix was huge. Just in my mix, not in the Coldplay mix. And that surprised me. A lot. Harshness, you know, for me in my mix was very much like 1.5K to 4K, or maybe more like 6 or 7K in some cases, with sibilance in the vocal. Oh my God, we'll talk about the vocal, I guess. But yeah, the harshness was something I really had to play with. And I was really surprised at how much of a difference it made just to grab an EQ and just cut a load of that you know, frequency spectrum. The like probably around like 2K to 5K or something like that, with like a gentle slope, and just like took loads of it out. And that, like, so much more of the mix like comes through that way. That's the whole, like, the idea of subtractive EQ. This idea is don't boost the things you like, just get rid of the things you don't like, and the good stuff comes through. Is a really important you know, technique, and a good sort of method to do your EQing. And that's what I found here, is like just taking out some of that harshness, literally just turning it down, made the whole mix, and I said I'll talk about it, it made the whole mix sound warmer and richer and nicer, because all of the low mids, which is where the warmth is, and as well as like the bass stuff and the very high, nice crispy frequencies up top, were able to come through and shine better, rather than just, you know, all of your compressors and limiters and whatever are just being slammed with sibilance and harshness that you don't really want to hear. So it's sort of, that was a surprise for me. I've had harsh mixes in the past, for sure. We all have. But I was definitely surprised to find, you know, the amount of harshness, like the difference. Almost more surprised, not at how harsh mine was, but how not harsh the Coldplay one was, right? It just felt so smooth and rich, and like how, like, it's never hurting my ears. Like I almost felt like I could, especially in my headphones, could turn up the Coldplay mix and just keep going, and it never really hurt my ears. It was always soft somehow, and that's because like of the warmth and the low end being like warm enough, and or you know, coming through loudly and you know, rich sort of quality, and then the only high stuff that's like ever too loud was the really crispy, nice stuff that you kind of like hearing. It's what I call like ear sugar. So yeah, I was very surprised. I mean, there's a reason the smiley face EQ became a thing, because it is a thing. It's, you know, it works. It's not a technique you want to use all the time, but it definitely works. So yeah, just cutting out a lot of that harshness was really cool. And the last thing is kind of related, that I noticed with my reference track, was the richness and the, I don't know, there's just this sort of quality in this sound that probably just comes from expensive gear and expensive people and expensive you know, technicians and engineers. But I couldn't, it took me so long to like find and hone in on like, what is that sound? There is something like rich and clean about the sound of like his vocals, about the sound of the whole mix. It just felt just nice. And it came down to like some of the things I've already mentioned, like letting the bass come through better, cutting out a lot of that harshness. By cutting out the harshness helped, you know, give rise to the warmth and the clarity in the bass and the clarity in the top end of course as well. Finding what that point is between harshness and like the ear sugar, Because right at the top, like 7K, especially on like a vocal, is harsh. It's like, oof, oh, don't boost that. But like 9K is beautiful, right? It's like it's so nice to hear this, you know, and as you go up, it becomes this like crispy niceness. Another reference I was using actually, because it came out like just as I was mastering, was Ariana Grande's new album. And I noticed she does something where, I mean, she's always like right up on the mic, you can hear it, but there's never any harshness. So they're obviously using DSs, probably very expensive DSs and whatever, and using them very well. But also I got the feeling there's just so much of that area that's just being like completely removed. And so it sounds like almost like ASMR or something in the very top end. So that's like part of that richness and that quality was in that top end, like finding what is harshness and what is like the ear candy at the top, and you know, making sure that you're cutting and boosting the right things up there. And yeah, so finding the richness. The other thing with that rich sound and that like, it's hard to describe, honestly. It's like a quality. It's just sounds expensive somehow. It's the space, you know. Obviously, say like Chris Martin's lead vocal is recorded in a beautiful studio, of course, right? But then there's so much like added reverb that's put on there pretty heavy, right? In that mix, my universe, it's a sort of futuristic, like if you've seen the music video, it's very futuristic, it's very like, you know, out there. They're on like another planet or something. So the idea like behind, if you think of like reverb as like putting your song or your vocal or your guitar or whatever in a world, well, they're trying to put it in a world of like, you know, cyberspace, and not literally, but but that sort of thing, like on another planet. It's all futuristic. And so they have this like long reverb tails on there, but they use some techniques, which I can maybe tell you about in another video, but they use some techniques like on the lead vocal to make sure that the clarity of the vocal comes through without being, you know, it's not like swamped in reverb. And I think I had dialed back the reverb on this song because, honest, true story, long time ago, I mixed an EP for someone and they came back, they hated the thing and they told me that I had put too much reverb on everything. This guy just said like it sounded like it was like swamped in reverb, and I was like, it sounds really good to me, I love it, but okay. It might be because it was like it was more of a rock EP and I'm more of a pop guy, but yeah, that sort of stuck with me, I think. And so like I tend to dial it down, like I take my reverb to where I think, oh, that's good, and then I dial it back because I'm like too tentative or scared or something. And so it was like kind of reassuring to hear the Coldplay song and go, hang on, there's a lot of reverb on this. There's a lot, like that vocal is like, there's got a tail for days. Same thing with Ariana Grande. There's just some of those songs on that new album, just like, it's like the reverb tail never ends. It's just got this sort of space to it. And then they're using side chaining and things like that to make sure that that vocal is still like right up front and in your face, but, you know, has the space to it. So yeah, those are the things I learned with my reference track. So the second thing, right, I'll quickly do the other two, right? That, I think reference track was the most important, so I wanted to really like jump in there with it. But the second one is a much more fun one when it came to producing. So with this song, I added new keyboard parts. I like changed the arrangement up a little bit from the original version, which was in 2017. So a long time ago, different song, different producer, different artist, you know. And so I added some keyboard parts and things like that. And I've been listening a lot to like the Jacksons and like a lot of like Motown stuff. And something I noticed with those productions is like, there's always just an energy and like a dancey funkiness that's happening that seems to inspire each part of the arrangement as it's brought in. And so What I tried to do in adding new keyboard parts and things was like, okay, this is going to have a new kind of beat. That was the main thing. I wanted to change the beat because I wasn't happy with the beat. I wanted a new kind of feel to the song and a new beat. So I actually came up with a new beat, just, you know, beatboxing into my phone, recorded like a voice note of this new beat and singing the song a little bit. And then so I kind of translated that into the software, into like a drum machine. I have that playing in my ears, and then I'm just coming up with ideas. Like, I'm not really thinking about it. I'm just kind of dancing to this beat that I really like and that has like the feel I want. I'm dancing and tapping my feet, and then I'm literally just singing into the mic, into the project, singing like do 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 do, or whatever it is, right? And translating those things into parts, right? This sounds really simple and obvious and how records are made, right? But I was kind of astounded at like how little I actually do that, right? Like, if you want your audience to be dancing and tapping their feet and have the song to have this infectious beat to it, like, you're going to need to feel that way when you're coming up with the arrangement, right? So just having like that feeling in my bones and then going do 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 do. Cool, recorded. Listen back to it and go, great, okay, that could be a chord. Okay, let me grab like a simple organ plugin or preset, I mean, and play do 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 do, right? By doing that, once when I had like 10 tracks of those just like basic ideas, it had so much more of a groove to previous releases. Just because I had that sort of feeling in my bones when I was coming up with it. So the second tip out of the 3 is just to, like, if you want to make a dancey track, you're going to have to be dancing and feeling the beat as you come up with the ideas. Same thing goes for like a 6/8 like stank face kind of ballad or something. Maybe you need a stank face while you're coming up with that like lead guitar solo, right? You can't necessarily rely on just like your sort of intuition or whatever. You have to like kind of feel it as you're doing it. Third tip is kind of an embarrassing one. So the third tip is to do with buses, right? So sending to different effects, sending to different grouping buses and stuff like that. I had this like horrible mistake. I'm unsure as to whether it was like part of the original song or not. I don't know, like back in 2017, I don't know. But basically I found, and this was like, I was pretty much done with it all. I'd finished the project and I was ready to bounce out and send it for distribution like that night. And I just noticed in the project that all of my reverb and delay sends somehow at some point got changed or were always in mono. So what that meant, right, so if you're unaware, what that means is like your reverb sound, you send a vocal to a reverb or add a reverb to it. If that reverb is in mono, that whole huge, spacious, enormous 3D sounding room becomes one signal. So it just gets like crushed down into like one mono signal. You don't have like stuff happening over here and here. It's just down the middle. So that meant my entire mix was sent to these buses that were in mono. So I'd made all these like crazy decisions of like really cranking like the reverb, really like messing with width a lot and stuff like that, because I was just not getting the results. I was like, what the heck? Okay, it'll have to do. Let's just save it, bounce it out and be done with it, you know? And luckily I discovered that these buses were in mono. I clicked that button, turned those things to stereo, and it was like, like huge. So that, which was also annoying because then I had to go back into the mix and like readjust things because I'd really cranked stuff. So suddenly it was like too reverb. It was like too much space. It was just like a mess. And like it was too wide, like, you know, all sorts of like phase issues. Like so I had to like go back and like readjust. Luckily, I think I ended up with a really good product that is like genuinely sounds very spacious, very wide. It's got that like wall of sound, big chorus. So I'm very pleased with it. But yeah, so if the third tip, if you have your stereo delay bus, your reverb bus, your other buses, like you might have like a drums bus, right? You're sending all of your drums to a bus. Make sure that thing is in stereo. Otherwise it's gonna be a mono mix. So don't make that mistake. I was so embarrassed. But anyway, those are my 3 tips. I hope you can use something of those in your next production. If you are new to the world of recording and mixing and you're looking for equipment guides and things like that, I have exactly that. And it's a good guide. It's got like lots of detailed information about like why you need stuff. And it's all the equipment. It's like XLR cables and microphones and software and all of that. Go down into that description box. There is a link. You can grab the free ebook from me to you. The other thing in there, I think it's in there, is there's a free lesson that sort of, it dots around on some of my videos. You can get like a free lesson to one of my courses. So if that's in there, check it out. But otherwise, I really hope this helped, and I wish you the best in making great music and some awesome audio. I'll see you on the next one.